May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. I wonder how everyone's Lent is going. Our fasting, our prayer, and our almsgiving. Our penance, our contemplation of death, the end of human experience, and the limit of human knowledge. I feel that mine has personally been a bit of a mixed bag at this point. Busyness makes me feel like my prayers. They're often less contemplative than searching, and more automatic than penitent, and frankly, fairly inconvenient most of the time. And I feel as though I can't be alone in this. The human mind tends towards shortcut and distraction. The old swinging monkey brain wants to close down contemplative thought, particularly the difficult Lenten variety, and to move on to the next, less difficult thing. In order to do this, we build fences that can guide us, a kind of locking ourselves in, so that we can get anything done at all. It seems to me like this locking in, part of deciding what we think about things, is easily becoming part of the problem. Telling a story about how we think things are causes blindness to reality and to God. We don't just miss the forest for the trees, we miss the trees for the map. There is something that feels necessary about the process of simplification that we undertake. It seems that social and economic realities, they're all around us, and they need us to get to work with our hands. They need us to increase our efficacy and our efficiency. And that's fair enough. We should be working with our hands. We should be getting things done. The problem is that to this end, we simplify things. We create rules that dictate how we act in the world. We increase, and today's gospel, it demonstrates the outcome of such a way of being in the world. The comically grumpy Pharisees get a pretty bad rap, and I think if we offer them a bit of empathy, that we'll find something fairly instructive. See, we notice they're not simply opposed to Jesus for the sake of maintaining power, or because they do not like what he is saying per se. These considerations might factor in, but only because they have first tried to protect something that is incredibly important to them and to us. They're maintaining the Sabbath. It's not the act of healing the blind man. It is that it is performed on a day that is set aside as holy for the Lord. The law, intended to protect something good, becomes something that obstructs their vision. They cannot see the work of Christ. They cannot even see the miraculous in a literal healing of a blind man. This shortcut to understanding the world and maintaining God's good order damages their sight like it is wont to damage our sight. Moreover, not only does it do damage to the blind themselves, but it causes a man to be cast out of his community. The healed man is dismissed for merely stating the fact of the matter. For the first time in his life, he could see. Recounting this story feels, as so many in the Gospels do, very appropriate for Lent. This seems especially true if we choose not to judge the Pharisees from the seat which is Christ's alone, but rather attempt to see ourselves in their behaviour. This season of penance and prayer is designed to address these kinds of overreaches of human understanding and self-understanding. And what are we humans after all? We are dust. We are the stuff of earth. We are but animate clay, a thinking, feeling, willing earthenware vessel. And our time in and vision of the world is incredibly partial. To dust we shall return. In the Lenten period, we undertake fasting and penance because we jars are cracked and broken and unfinished, and not always very good at showing this about ourselves, very intent on hiding it from everybody else. And not unlike the Pharisees, we do this by telling stories about the world and about ourselves, stories in which the goods we seek are supreme, and all other goods that other people see and find value and meaning in are rendered subordinate. We decide what is important. We decide how it ranks. The stories we then tell ourselves become all-consuming of us and of everything we lay eyes and hands on. These stories do not only fail to hide our brokenness from ourselves and others, they further damage us as vessels, rendering us unable to hold our portion of the love of God, which is God's justice. In the end, we are seeking to paper over abyssal ignorance. Truly, the things we do not know fill the cosmos to bursting. Our paper stories will not do the trick. It's clay and the hands of true repair that we require. Jesus shows us this in the healing of the blind man itself. When he kneels and spits in the dirt, he makes clay, smearing it in the man's broken eyes. He knows we are made of earth, and it is only he who can repair us. If we interpret the story through the blindness of the Pharisees and of ourselves, Jesus' strange method might begin to make sense. I don't know if anybody else thought, what's he doing, rubbing mud in someone's face? Well, imagine for a moment you are an onlooker, perhaps even an onlooking Pharisee. This man, who you have already seen work wonders, smears dirt and spit in the eyes of a man you perceive to have been born blind on account of his sin or his parents' sin. On this latter point, you already note that Jesus, in even attempting to heal the blind man, is blaspheming the justice of God. The justice you understand, having spent much of your life studying its nature and history with your people. But really, it's the theatricality that gets you first, and then the absurdity. Clay in the eyes. It's almost as though Jesus is further obscuring the sight of the blind man, as if he weren't blind enough. And this man, he didn't seem to need punishing or further humbling, and yet here we are. And the man's allowing him to do it. That's just what happens. Jesus sends the blind man then, dirt-faced, to the waters of Siloam, being sent to wash it away. Siloam does not flow continuously, but at uncertain times of the day, it bursts forth with a loud noise and then is silent. The man is sent to the water to wait for the water to burst forth. You follow to see what happens. By your reckoning, this is a continued indignity. He kneels where he was told to kneel, waits where Christ told him to wait. The blind man is the lowest he has ever been, but he's only got time. And then you hear a rumble, and then a great crash of water rushes forth. The man, still kneeling, cups his hands what he can from the geyser and washes the clay from his eyes. And immediately, something has changed. For the first time in his life, he sees light. Awe crosses his face. You try to imagine anything so bright, and you come up frustratedly short. The healed man's awe is certainly compelling testimony, but testimony to what? Somewhere in the back of your distracted mind, you begin to try and place the experience. What is this sign that I've seen on this day, the Sabbath? Sabbath? Wait a minute. This man has been healing, has been working on a day set aside for the Lord. Your mind, a mix of frustration, confusion, powered by borrowed and perplexing awe, races. You do what you always do. You defend what you think you know. Rather than curiosity, you're filled with indignation and an impulse to defend what is good, your sight. You draw on your traditions, the thing that you are sure are sacred. You double down on a story that has no room for what you have seen, wielding it as a hammer in search of a nail. And in doing so, you only draw the judgment of the healer. I don't know about you, but I think I experience something of the Pharisees' impulse to tell stories here on a fairly regular basis. It's a defensiveness that closes down novel information given by God in the world based on things that I believe I already know. This is where I find myself in Lent, mired in pride born of my own ignorance. And this takes many forms. I tend to think it's a constant human problem. For me, it often takes the form of emphasis on the tradition that as I conceive of it, or lessons drawn from past experiences, often hard won. And these are good things. But there's always room for the breaking in of something else. Something that exceeds my limited knowledge. Something that exceeds even our capacity for knowledge. Ignoring this obscures our already partial vision. And this is why, in this season, we accept that we are ignorant and often damaged. We hold extremely partial fragments of knowledge and understanding. And what stories do we cling to that are false? Just to protect and console ourselves? To protect our pride? That which seems well-intentioned, even to ourselves? We must realise that our intention can render any goods corrupt. Under the right circumstances, it can turn them into obscuring idols. They can and do blind us. In our penance and contemplation, we allow ourselves to fall into places that feel like greater ignorance, to allow Christ to further blind us of what we think we know, to rub clay in our eyes. And perhaps this will feel ponderous to some of you, like we ought to work more with our hands, and like contemplation is a waste of our time. But maybe we ought to reorient ourselves, to think about this in the way that perhaps it ought to always be engaged, prayerfully. In this period, we wait for hope of redemption, waiting at the waters of Siloam for the blood of Christ to wash away our ignorance. And what can we hope to see when our eyes are opened? On one level, we don't know. And on the other level, light, that by which everything is already seen. That which has always been present to us, but we've had our eyes closed, we've been blind. In Lent, we confess our blindness and we wait for the light, not because we know, but because God has promised. It is faith and hope and love all the way down. We have not knowledge, we have Christ. And so we pray. Lord, help us to acknowledge our dire limitations, our ignorance that allows you to be known in and to us. Allow us to see the places where our knowledge fails and to have faith in being stripped of our assumptions. Let us look to you in faith and hope to be repaired. Make us whole vessels, worthy to hold our portion of your justice and love.